So this happened years ago, when I was still a dumb teenage girl who loved walking the city alone after dark. This took place in Eastern Europe, and for context, in a city with a tramway system. On this one night, I sat in a tram station waiting to catch the last tram home. 3 trams stopped at this station, 2 of which went where I was going. Important info for later. It was around 10 p.m., and as I sat there waiting, lost in thought, I barely registered a man quietly walking up and standing by the shelter. I thought nothing of it, just someone else waiting for the tram, until I started feeling weird. The streets were quiet and dark, and there was no one else in sight, just me and this guy, and I started wondering why he chose to stand this close to me when he had so much space to avoid dealing with people. I couldn't comprehend anyone wanting to socialize this late at night, given that I was not very social myself. So I glanced at him, trying not to overthink it. He was a bald-headed, beady-eyed giant, tall and built like a bear, big belly and big arms and legs. I was 5'2" and scrawny, but that wasn't what scared me. It was the fact that he was staring right at me, unblinking and expressionless, not even attempting to look away or act embarrassed. No, this guy wanted me to feel uncomfortable. I instantly felt weak and shaky, cold shivers down my spine. This was not normal. I realized quickly that I was not in a good situation. I could miss the last tram, walking home was out of the question, and my phone was almost dead. I was a shy kid, and didn't have what it takes to scare this guy away. I knew that, but I had to at least try. I only managed to utter a small "hi," trying my best to startle him out of whatever he was thinking, but my attempt failed in the face of his silent, threatening aura. He kept staring, no sign of intent to reply. He was enjoying this. Feeling the panic rising inside me, I told myself to stay calm and think rationally. Maybe he didn't hear me. Minutes passed, his stare continued to burn on my skin, and there was no tram in sight. Ignoring him didn't work. So I mustered the courage to speak once again, this time louder. "What do you want?" Stop staring. No answer. He definitely heard me this time. I felt myself start to get angry. I didn't want to let this guy get to me anymore. I didn't want to continue to give him the satisfaction of watching me squirm nervously and pretend that his behavior didn't bother me. I took a deep breath and forced myself to start thinking. I knew what I couldn't do. I couldn't fight him off if he made a move, and there's nothing I can say or do that will get him to stop. I didn't know what his intentions were, but I knew they weren't good. If I tried to walk away, he would probably follow. I could run, but he would most likely catch up to me before I could tire him out, since his legs were much longer than mine. Even if I managed to somehow lose him, walking home through dark alleys, past the junkies and gypsies that were always prowling about, could land me in an even worse situation. I could pretend to call someone, but he might feel compelled to act much sooner if he felt threatened. So, what could I do? The only thing I could realistically be able to do was to try and outsmart him somehow. So I started developing a few plans, depending on which tram showed up, trying to confirm whether he was just amusing himself and actually waiting for a tram too, or popped over for other, more suspicious reasons, and whether I could get any kind of help. I couldn't let him see where I lived, so if he followed me, I'd have to be prepared to employ whatever strategy available, and for that, I needed to stay rational and aware of my surroundings. While I was still thinking, the first tram showed up. It was the one I could have taken home, but this one pulled into the depot right in my neighborhood, forcing me to lead him to my home. I hoped he would board it and leave me be, but he didn't. He kept watching me carefully. I let the tram go, desperately hoping it wasn't the last one to head home. He continued to watch, and I sensed that he was quite happy with how things were going. I put up with it for another 15 minutes, trying to focus on another plan of action. I could now pretend that I needed the other tram, the one going to a different area of the city, and just ride to the next station, getting off as soon as possible, so I don't end up too far and miss the tram I need. This tram showed up next. With my heart in my throat, I boarded it and sat down by the door. He got on it too, but sat himself in the back, pretty far from where I was. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking this might still go well. When the tram reached the next station, I got up and out, not looking back and hoping it was all over. But when I stepped on the pavement and watched the tram drive away, I couldn't see him in it. I turned my head slowly and was terrified to see him walking towards me, looking slightly pissed off. He stopped just a few steps away and resumed staring, this time with a clear hint of malice, still in silence. My vision blurred as I fought back tears of despair. He was not going to let me go. The helplessness I felt was unbearable, but I couldn't cry. I couldn't give up. I had to find a way. I had to get home that night. The prospect of what might happen to me any time was becoming too real. My head was full of unanswered questions, regrets, and horrible scenarios. I wanted so badly to not have to think anymore, to not have to fight back the tears and stay composed, but I knew this would be his cue to enact whatever fucked up plan he had in mind. I couldn't let that happen. Then, I saw the final tram approach, the only one I could take now, and got on as quickly as my trembling legs would allow me to. When I was in, bright lights enveloping me, my mind snapped out of its nightmarish spiral of fear, and allowed me a moment of clarity. I had 3 stops to figure this out. I sat down at the front and looked at the driver. He was a frail old man, blissfully unaware of my distress. Getting the driver's attention was a no-go. We passed one stop. There was no one else waiting to climb aboard. I turned around, fully expecting to see that psycho had followed me again, but I did not expect him to be sitting right behind me. He was not taking any chances. He was making sure I wouldn't try anything like last time. I shot him a hateful glare and allowed my anger to overcome my fear. I stood up and purposefully walked over to another seat in the middle of the tram car. I wanted to make it clear I will not put up with his BS any longer. He got up too, and slowly walked up to a spot 2 seats behind and diagonally from me, then sat down with the tiniest, arrogant grin on his face. Already expecting it, I shot up and stood by the middle door instead, determined to keep him on his toes. If I stood right by the door, he wouldn't have any idea which station I planned to get off at. He remained where he was this time, convinced that I was bluffing. After all, this was really the last tram. There was nothing else I could possibly do to escape now. So my defiance was just a funny act to him. This was my chance. I had to take the risk. It had to work. There were 3 doors on the tram, and they all opened and closed at the same time, and stayed open for around 5 seconds before closing again if no buttons were pressed or people detected on the threshold. The next stop, the only one left before mine, came into view. The tram slowed to a stop. The doors opened. I made no move. 5 long seconds passed. The doors started to close. I bolted out and ran for it, reaching the back door as fast as I could, and slamming the button to open it again. My whole body was tense with adrenaline. I waited a long, painful second, and jumped back in, keeping my head low, holding my breath, and crouching behind the nearest seat. I shut my eyes tightly and exhaled slowly, while thanking the gods I didn't believe in for that button working, and wishing with all my might for him to not have seen me before I got back in. As I was waiting to hear his footsteps approaching, I pictured him frantically looking for me. Was he still on the tram, face screwed up in anger, head turning like a fat, ugly meerkat? Or was he catching his breath on the pavement of the last station, mad eyes searching the darkness for me? As the tram continued its loud journey, banging and clanging in sync with my heartbeat, I dared smile to myself, imagining his face when he realized he fucked up. Hand on my chest, I did my best to stealthily look around the corner and found no one was looking back. I stood up in excitement and threw myself at the foggy back window. There he was, standing alone and victimless on that slowly fading out of sight station, watching me leave him and his vile plans behind. Giving someone the middle finger never felt so good. I made it home and told no one my story, for fear I'd be admonished for my naivety, but I was safe, I was proud of myself, and I learned my lesson. Creepy stranger, I hope the events of that day taught you not to underestimate girls, and prevented you becoming a criminal for the rest of your life. Let's never meet again. This story happened about 1.5 years ago now, when I was around 19, and it will always stay with me, as it has given me PTSD and a greater fear of men since it happened. I had just moved into a college apartment with friends, only to find out a few months later that there was improper ventilation, leading to humidity and mold in the bathrooms and other spaces. Maintenance/management would proceed to label it as discoloration, and to just leave the windows open or to buy a fan, and stop taking steamy showers. I found it funny, since none of us enjoyed hot showers, and at the most, took lukewarm ones. This advice was given after this event, and ignoring my reports I made to law enforcement and the main landlord. However, we were barely adults and had never had to deal with such a terrible mold issue, buying sprays and cleaning the ceilings, crevices, tub, etc., constantly in fear of mold inhalation. We found this, and leaving our window open with the mosquito screen locked helped the most. This small window, the size of an average human head, about 9 feet off the ground, facing the other apartment's window, was of no concern to us when we were using the bathroom. After all, we had walked outside and made sure no one could easily look in. Of course, I did not predict what would come next. On our front porch, we had some pumpkins and a single white chair that was barely used that night. This is important to know for later. One night, after airing out the humid bathroom after a shower, I wished my roommate goodnight around 2 a.m. before going to use the toilet. I was wearing the baggiest shirt ever, thankfully, so nothing was exposed while doing so, but I nonchalantly flushed and went to wash my hands while glancing to the left, where the window was ajar as usual. That's when I saw it, in the pitch blackness of night, in contrast to the blaring, cheap bathroom lights. There was a pale, round orb with a mop of dark hair atop it. I still cannot explain the feeling I had, almost like someone is whispering to you just audibly enough where you need a second or two to register what they just said. That pause, and a quick turn to the right, and then a quick spin right back for the window. I saw a white arm leaning into the mosquito screen for support before whisking away and down, out of frame. It moved, and, without another thought, I found myself running for the front door, yelling. Someone was looking into the bathroom, a few times to my roommate in the living area. On a side note, do not ever chase after a perp, no matter the case, even if it is hard with adrenaline running through you in these cases. I heard her yelling back while I found myself already at the bottom of the window outside, now hearing scuffling through the wood chips outside our apartment building. It was clearly the sound of someone escaping through the shadows, no mistaking it. I couldn't see anyone through the shitty trees that were planted, and stopped as I could not pinpoint where exactly he ran. I thought about yelling some cheap insult or threat to scare him, but found myself feeling waves of shock silence me. I ran past my roommate, grabbing my phone from inside and calling my mother, who advised me to call a non-emergency number in my town. I did so, while sitting on the patio with my self-defense items and my roommate. The lady that answered was annoyed and sounded like she didn't want to believe me, no matter what I said, because I didn't get a good look at him. She simply sighed and said the police will be over to survey the complex a few times and hung up. My roommate and I were in shock, just sitting there in silence. We discussed in detail what just happened when we saw a cop car driving around an apartment complex 1 block away, then immediately drive off after 1 minute. Obviously, this left me feeling defeated more than before. I got angry, stood up, and examined the area outside the window myself. I saw no footprints or markings that were unnatural, and even tried standing on the electric boxes outside to see if I could look inside. Not only were the boxes too narrow for someone any bigger than myself, as I have a small shoe size compared to the average man, as I guessed he would be from his vague appearance, but this would only allow for a view of half of the ceiling for a second or two before falling off. This couldn't have been how he looked in. I knew from the way he had struggled to get down. I saw enough of his torso to determine he was around 5'8", and had to have some other way to easily be staring in like he had. It was also odd that he had darted off without me seeing him, and only hearing him because there are sensors placed around the complex, with one right by our bathroom window. When triggered, they display a bright and blinding light that lights up the whole back area inside of our apartment, where this occurred. I brainstormed for a second before darting off past it. It didn't go off. When I walked back to my roommate, that was when it did. I tested this twice over. Same results. It only worked when you were not running past it. I felt a sense of relief, only to the fact that it was not so crazy. I was the only witness to this, but I could tell my roommate believed me. We headed back to our front door, talking about what we would do if he came back. Obviously, we would be keeping our window closed now, but we had to give him just desserts. That's what we thought in our exhausted and overwhelmed teen heads. That was when I joked about grabbing one of our pumpkins and hitting him over the head with it, when I stopped in my tracks. "Hey, did we have a chair there?" I asked. The white patio chair was gone. We looked around. It was nowhere to be found. I gasped and almost fell to my knees. That was how he did it. My roommate hurriedly looked through her phone. She remembered having a food order earlier that day with photo confirmation. Approximately 4 hours earlier. There it was, the bag at our door that was sitting directly on a white chair, next to our pumpkins. The same chair. I immediately posted to social media sites, asking for help finding this distinct chair, thinking it would be the last hope he could have in finding this pale-faced creep. Not only had he been staring into our bathroom for God knows how long, but he had surveyed our front door area, and possibly looked in through the windows here as well, although the blinds were closed. Our apartment made sure to install the worst kind of blinds that you could never fully close, so if anyone wants to look in, even into your bedroom, they would just have to crouch down a little bit. We felt disgusted and shocked. I left 3 voice messages with the apartment complex the next day, informing them of the incident and about the issues with their ventilation. As you expected, no one ever got back to me, which was weird since they always did previously. I felt like everyone failed me in this moment. I did everything I could, but I never received any closure or solace. In fact, I received tips from other college girls in the same area, telling me of very similar experiences, where they sometimes had full view of a greasy, older man even touching himself to them. Recently, these past few months too, there have been numerous sexual assaults as well as peeping toms in the same area of our apartments. Funnily enough, the clear descriptions match what glimpse I got of him. Still, the police never caught anyone in connection with these cases. I never viewed this area as a bad area, and always took every precaution I could, but I still feel at fault now. I know I'm not, but I hope everyone living in a similar situation makes sure to at least close their shower curtains to shield yourself, or close their window when the bathroom is in use at all. I wish I could buy security cameras, but I know management would file a complaint. I am moving out soon, so this is the only solace I have of getting out there and leaving all this behind. And to the greasy, stinky, pale a-hole who I stared eye to eye with all that time ago, I hope we never meet again, for your sake.